Get started. For those of you for whom it's your first time, which I don't think that it is, judging from how many disabled microphones and cameras I see, welcome to the Santa Barbara County SELPA's online professional development workshop series. For those of you returning to us, which it looks like it's probably the majority of you, welcome back. My name is Brian Helt. I am the clerical assistant for the Santa Barbara County SELPA office. You may have spoken to me over the phone or exchanged emails with me in the past, or perhaps regarding your registration for this professional development workshop. These are a series of workshops that our office is producing and putting on and offering to staff inside and outside of the SELPA, Santa Barbara County SELPA jurisdiction in response to the COVID-19 outbreak, and in concordance to the social distancing ordinance and the work at home work order as mandated by the governor's office. I'm going to go over 4 very brief points of housekeeping because it looks as though everybody pretty much has either heard this before or kind of intuitively knows these points. So I'm just going to kind of breeze right through these so you guys can get started. First off, I want to say happy Friday to everybody. Thank you to each and every one of you for making time for our PDs. I say this every PD, but know that we mean it every time we reiterate this. Thank you for taking the time to join us. Without you, these PDs would not occur. They would not be successful. So know that you are what makes these happen. So we appreciate seeing each and every one of your names just stack up in our participant list. It really is truly a reward and a privilege for us to be able to offer this to you. First of all, I'm going to go over how to mute. Doesn't seem like a whole lot of people need to push up on this.
Some people, Brian.
Okay, so do you want me to still go over it?
Sure.
Okay, so in order to do so, you're going to want to go to your lower left-hand corner where you'll see a little microphone glyph underneath it. If you are not muted, you'll see the word mute. Go ahead and click that in order to mute yourself. Of course, Alison will dictate how she wants to interact with each and every one of you, so definitely defer to her before you unmute yourself and share any thoughts or ask any questions. She will let you know exactly how she wants to handle that. We ask that each and every one of you remain muted so that each of our presenters has the full time span with which to cover their material. As many of our PDs, I'm sure you know, are quite informatively dense. So we definitely want to be able to offer that amount of space to make sure that we get through the material and in a timely fashion so that you guys can get back to your regular workflow. Second off, let's talk about how to disable or enable video. We don't make a policy with regards to offering video. I'm sorry, I'm hearing a little bit of sound from someone. We don't make a policy in regards to whether or not you need to be sharing your whatever images on your camera. That's going to be the prerogative of each and every one of you. We just ask that you remain cognizant. But if you have not already perhaps cover this, that button is going to be right next to your microphone button. It's going to say either start video or stop video, depending on if you have canceled it, disabled it, or enabled it. If you will know that you're disabled because each of these functions will have a red hash line through them. Let's go ahead and talk about the chat function. Again, Alison will absolutely cover if and how she wants to handle the chat function with regards to this professional development workshop. But in order to enable or disable that, that's going to be in your center bottom console. Right there next to share screen, participants, record reactions. These are other buttons that you may or may not see, but I know for sure you have a little dialog box with the word chat underneath it. If you haven't already done so, you can click that to open up your chat box. It doesn't look like there are any entries so far. I'm just going to go ahead and click or put in a little quick entry so that you can see that it is still functioning. Again, Alison will decide how she wants to handle that. Lastly, I want to bring everybody's attention to the fact that we are recording these PDs to offer to staff and other individuals in our community at a future date. We don't have a development as of when exactly we will be able to get these recordings onto our website, but we are still intending to do that. That is a situation that is evolving and continuously developing. So keep your ears to the ground with regards to that. Also be aware that anything you say or do or share through your camera or microphone is essentially being immortalized. So just be cognizant of what is coming through on your end, particularly if you have your camera enabled. Maybe take a peek behind you, see what maybe you're not fully aware that you're sharing with your colleagues that might be coming through. But given that, I hope each and every one of you have a great PD. Again, happy Friday. We made it another week, guys. Give yourselves a pat on the back. And with no further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Alison for today's PD on self-care for staff. Take care, and I will see you next week.
Thank you, Brian. All right, everybody. I'm really glad that you could make it. In regards to participation, it looks like we have around 30 people right now. So feel free, your mics are muted right now. As Brian said that, we can all hear you when you unmute your mic. So feel free to keep those muted for now. But if you do want to chime in and you have a question, because we have relatively low numbers, I don't mind if you unmute your microphone and interrupt me at all. I really like participation instead of hearing myself talk all the time. So if you do have a comment that you want to make verbally, feel free to unmute your mic throughout the training and join in verbally. You can also, like Brian said, use the chat box feature. So you can send a message to everyone in that. I don't remember if Brian did note this or not, but in the chat box, conversations all get saved. So just keep in mind that does, and we also see the private chats when that gets saved. So just keep that in mind. I just want to make sure that you guys are all aware of that. I saw that somebody signed in already. And put their name and what district they're in. But feel free. I think that we still are able to keep to see everyone's name so we know who's participating, so that we can account for you if your district does ask if you participated. However, if you would like to enter that into the chat box too, it's really nice for me to be able to know who's here, what school you're from, and maybe what role you're in at that school, just so I get an idea of who's in our Zoom room today. And I'll be checking the chat box about every couple of slides. I won't check it every single time that somebody puts in a chat, just because it starts to get really distracting for me. But I will be referring to it. So if you do, again, if that's your preferred mode of participating, feel free to put a question or a comment into the chat box, and I will reference it from time to time and make sure that I get to you. Okay. Thank you guys. I see that a lot of you are signing in through chat. So thanks. I'll be checking that. So here's this first slide. You guys can all see my screen with the PowerPoint up, I'm hoping. If you can't, let me know. This has my contact information. So here's my email and my cell phone number. Feel free at any point to text me, email me, call me if you have any questions or need some help with some resources. I'm happy to help in any way that I can. Okay. And with that said, I think we'll go ahead and get started here. And you may hear my kids are not here. I have a 4-year-old and a baby. They both are out of the home right now with my husband, so getting some fresh air. So you should only really hear the birds chirping in the background. So we shouldn't have any other interruptions, which is well planned for self-care. All right, so these are some things that we're going to cover in our time together this morning. So we're going to talk about self-care during this time of COVID-19. Can't really get around that. Super important to cover how we're all taking care of ourselves right now and some tips on how to do so. Then we're going to talk about some definitions and review some key terms that are related to self-care. Talk about some symptom identification, so how to notice if you or someone else may be suffering and may be in need of some support. The importance of showing up for yourself. And then we'll also talk about what self-care in school looks like. So I know that we're all doing distance learning. We're all working from our homes right now for the most part. And but I do want to talk about what that's going to look like when we return back to the classroom. So we'll cover that as well. So we'll talk about the self-care during this time of COVID-19, as well as what it's going to look like when we're physically back in school. And then also covering again what the self-care looks like outside of school. Okay, so hang in there with me. I'm still not super speedy with changing what I'm sharing with you guys, but we are going to start with a meditation this morning, a kind of a mindfulness activity just to get us all grounded, present here in the room. So I'm going to go bring that up on YouTube. And also, disclaimer, I don't yet have a membership to YouTube, so there may be a little commercial that starts first, but we'll speed through that as quickly as possible. So hang in there while I share this other screen with you. Okay. Okay, guys, here we go. So get comfortable. If you have your videos on and you feel more comfortable taking your video off at any point, I know sometimes people don't feel comfortable doing mindfulness practices or meditation in front of people, which is the beauty of also being remote right now. So feel free to take your video off and just get comfortable, relax. This will be about 5.5 minutes, and then we'll regroup.
5-minute anxiety reduction. Sit or lay comfortably, resting your hands on your legs or at your sides. Begin to focus your attention on your breathing, feeling your chest move gently inward and outward. Your mind may be racing with uncomfortable or fearful thoughts, and that's okay. Just continue to breathe naturally and effortlessly. Feel the air flow gently in and out of your nostrils, and feel a soothing lightness throughout your body, flowing from the top of your head all the way down to the tips of your toes, gently and effortlessly. As you slowly and gradually create this awareness, repeat after me, either out loud or in your mind. Each time counting down from 5 to 1 and stating stillness, awareness after each number. Repeating after me. 5, stillness, awareness. 4, stillness, awareness. 3, stillness, awareness. 2, stillness, awareness. 1, stillness, awareness. Remember, you are not these unpleasant feelings. You have overcome them in the past, and you will rise above them again, ever changing. If the feelings stay with you for some time, it's okay. Time and awareness will allow it to fade. Time and awareness will allow it to fade. And now one last time, nice and slowly, repeating this time, calm and present. 5, calm and present. 4, calm and present. 3, calm and present. 2, calm and present. 1, calm and present. Sit with your feelings, whatever they are, at this moment for just a few more moments. Feel the air moving slowly in and out. Your chest moving gently up and down, and effortlessly you become aware. Peace will return. You're becoming aware again and again. Remain in stillness and allow yourself to let go.
All right, guys, I'm just gonna change my screen here. Give me one sec. Okay. So what was that like for you guys? You can go ahead and put it in the chat box. Just let me know, was that uncomfortable? Was that pleasant? Was it weird? Did you like the guy's voice, not like the guy's voice? I know some previous trainings kind of, most people enjoyed it. I did have somebody say that they thought his voice was a little creepy. So I don't know, but good feedback to know. And also a good reminder that what works for somebody, what works for you may not work for somebody else. So self-care to one may be a little different from self-care to another person, or what kind of guided meditation works for you may not be best for somebody else. His voice wasn't the most relaxing for you, Gianna, but it was still peaceful. So these are things, these guided meditations, you can just, I just looked this up on YouTube. So there's a lot of free guided meditations on YouTube that if you just need to have a little grounding activity, it's just a wonderful resource. There's lots of different types, so you can find the one that works for you. So you can try out a few, and I really like them because they're really short. So you can do, meditation doesn't have to be something that's a half an hour long. It could be something that's a couple minutes. So just a good reminder that these are some resources that we can use. Oh, thanks, Kirsty. Inner Explorer is an awesome resource for children's guided meditations. That's really good to know. So if you guys do know some resources that you use, I know I use the Calm app, and I do a meditation before I go to bed every night, and it's usually 10 to 12 minutes. It's just their daily meditation. Calm.com, Candace said, has great meditation. So those are pretty short, and I do them before bed because it's really hard for me to find any other time during the day to do it. And Candace said it's free for educators. That's wonderful. Yeah, Headspace is a really popular one, Susan. That's great. So if you guys want to check the chat box, it looks like people are putting in a lot of really great resources in there that you guys can write down and check out for yourselves. Okay, so hopefully that helped get us a little more grounded in our space right now. I know there's a ton going on right now, but we're here now, and we're going to move on to talking about mental wellness tips for this time during quarantine. I definitely do not take credit for generating this list. I found this list via a friend who shared it with me. It was developed by a psychologist. I tried to track down who it was, but she didn't share her name, but she shared all these tips. And I also have a longer version that kind of talks more about each of these in more detail. So if you'd like that, to share with anybody else, please let me know, and I can send you a document that has more information on them. For now, I'm just going to talk you through these. So there's going to be 25 total of tips to do right now. This is, the word unprecedented, I'm sure we've heard many, many times by now. However, that's the best word for what we're going through right now, that this really is an unprecedented time during COVID-19. And we're all experiencing stress and a trauma on a collective level. We're all feeling it. We can't help but to feel it. So self-care is way more important now than ever. So it's good that we look at these tips and know that these tips are great for this time of high stress, but they're also good for really any time, but perfect to be practicing right now. So with that said, the first tip is sticking to a routine. So given that we're all working from home, most of us, our routine is definitely going to look different than normal. You know, we're used to getting up, getting ready, getting out the door, and everything that falls into that process. And right now, that's mostly not the case. So we are getting up. However, we don't necessarily have somewhere to physically be other than in our own homes, since we're still practicing social distancing. So it is best for our mental health to try to stick with some routine. So I know for myself, that means getting up around the same time each day, which isn't necessarily my choice, what time that is, because my kids always wake me up very, very, very early. But they're pretty routine about waking me up early. So they keep me on routine in the morning. So I get up early. I always need to take a shower in the morning. That's what gets me jump started. I always make my cup of tea every morning, have my breakfast, give my kids breakfast, take care of them. You know, so we have our certain routines that we do every single morning, and then throughout the day as much as possible. And then at night, we have more of a routine as well. It really just helps keep us as grounded as possible so that we have that predictability. So it's great for children, and it's also good for us as the adults. So if you haven't already started doing, providing a routine for yourself during this time, I highly suggest that. The second tip would be dress for the social life that you want, not the social life that you have. So I know it's really tempting and could be a form of self-care just to wear really comfortable clothes, you know, stretchy pants every single day, and totally fine to be comfortable. However, it also does impact our mood. Sometimes if we get up and we say we put on a different, I know my sister jokes about having her nighttime sweats and her daytime sweats. But if we do get dressed and actually put on some other clothes that make us feel good about ourselves, it does help shift our mood. So something to consider, even though we're not necessarily getting together and socializing with other people, it does impact our mental health. If we get showered and get dressed in comfortable clothes, take time to brush our teeth, do all those same routines that we would normally do, can really impact us for the betterment. 3, I'm getting out once a day for at least 30 minutes. So I know we're all trying to work from home, and that can be really challenging. We're sitting in front of a computer a lot more than we normally do. We're all on Zoom a lot more than we normally are. So that means that we're sitting a lot. Normally when we're working in schools, we're up and moving constantly. So this one's really big. And then I'm going to piggyback on it a little bit for the next one too, which is find some time to move each day, again, for at least 30 minutes. So that could be combining those. So getting out and moving for 30 minutes a day is so important right now because a lot of us are pretty sedentary. So getting outside, we're so blessed to live where we do live. I mean, I really feel for people that live in crowded cities and aren't able to get outside and move their bodies or experience the wonderful weather that we have here. You know, all of us live near open spaces. We're still allowed to go access that. So important for our mental health right now to make sure that you get up and get outside, go for a walk, move your body in some way, shape, or form. Number 5, reach out to others. And again, for at least 30 minutes a day. So I know in the beginning when this all started for myself, I found myself being more introverted and not reaching out as much as I normally would. And then some of my friends started suggesting doing Zoom meetings. So Zoom all the time during the day and at night, but getting together with friends via Zoom in the evenings after our kids go to sleep and just connecting that way. And at first I thought it was going to be something that was just another thing. Okay, I have to schedule that too. But then once I did it, oh my gosh, the immense benefit that I felt from it. I just felt a weight lifted after I connected with them and talked to them about what they're experiencing and what they're going through and just saw my friends. It just made a world of difference. So connecting that way, you know, FaceTime, phone calls, whatever it may be, that you can reach out and connect with people. Some of my friends, even that I I studied abroad in college, and a group of the girls that I studied abroad with reached out, and we're all going to be getting together too. So getting together with people that we haven't talked to for a long time. So there are some silver linings that are coming out of this, but connecting with people during this time is huge for our mental health, as we can feel so isolated and alone given the social distancing guidelines. I know it's been awkward for me going to the grocery store and nobody's, people aren't talking to each other, and it can be very awkward. So we're trying to find that connection where and how we can safely. Moving on for number 6, so staying hydrated and eating well. I think it depends on who, the person, but some people, if we're home all day, we may start snacking all day long, or we may forget to eat. I know I am definitely on the side of snacking all day long, and my husband just doesn't eat at all right now. So I have to remind him to get some meals in, and to drink water. So we normally have our practices when we're out and about, at school, and trying to take care of ourselves by eating well and staying hydrated. And we need to remember to also be doing that, when we're at home. Okay, so basic needs. Number 7, develop a self-care toolkit. So this one can look a little different for everyone. So a lot of self-care, like successful self-care strategies, involve a sensory component. And let's see, just reading a little bit more about this. So covering the 7 senses. So we're talking about touch, taste, sight, hearing, smell, movement, and comforting pressure. So an idea for each of these could be things like a soft blanket or a stuffed animal, hot chocolate or tea, photos of vacations, some pleasant visuals you can look at, comforting music, lavender or eucalyptus oil. So I know a lot of people enjoy essential oils, so just something that smells good, a small swing or a rocking chair, and maybe something like a weighted blanket for that pressure component. So this may look different for everybody, but having some type of self-care toolkit for yourself that you can go to and retreat to, and it doesn't need to be for a lot of time, but just some things that you feel like you can incorporate to help take care of yourself. I know for myself, I really love coloring the mandalas. So there's a lot of adult coloring books that can be really nice and very, just create a sense of calm. So that could be another thing you could add to your toolkit. Number 8, spending time playing with children. So for those of you who do have children at home, normally at school, we're surrounded by kids, might be high school kids, but we're surrounded by kids all the time. I have my toddler at home normally right now, and it's been really challenging, definitely, having him at home and trying to work. However, it's also been a blessing. It's also been wonderful to be able to spend that time playing with him. So when we are if we do have that opportunity to be playing with our kids right now, it's just trying to really be present during that time. And it's not only extremely beneficial for them, but it's extremely beneficial for us to kind of get lost in that playtime and follow their lead, and really try to enjoy it as much as possible when we can. Number 9, giving everyone the benefit of the doubt and a wide berth. I think this one's so important. We're all experiencing this collective trauma and stress, and even if we might not be aware of it in the moment, it's there, it's present within us. And knowing that when our systems are overloaded and we're feeling stressed, it's really difficult to near impossible to be at the best version of ourselves at that time. So knowing that and having some compassion for ourselves, and then also extending that compassion to those around us, given that we're with them a lot more than we normally are, trying to practice giving that other person and the other members of your family or friends that you're surrounded with right now that extra space, knowing that they're struggling too, and giving them that wide berth and acceptance. So we're all going to have moments where we're not at our best, and it's important to move with grace throughout those blow-ups. You don't have to show up to every argument that you're invited to, and not a time right now to hold grudges or continue disagreements. We're all doing the best we can to get through this really difficult time. And sometimes we're going to be sorry, that's my dishwasher. sometimes we're going to be doing better than others. So reminder, be compassionate to yourself and those around you. All right, number 10, everyone find their own retreat space. So this kind of goes along with the self-care toolkit. Like I've set up a little corner in my bedroom for me with my self-care toolkit, and that's my space. I have my chair, I have my weighted blanket, I have my stuff there for when I can get a few minutes to myself. Normally when my kids are napping, I try to force myself to sit down for 5 or 10 minutes and really enjoy that space. So even if we have small living quarters, if everyone, including children, can have their own place where they know, okay, I'm just going to go here and color or read a book or just chill out for a little while, something to consider so that since we're all together all the time right now, it's nice to have our own identified space. I'm going to go ahead and check the chat real quick to see if there's a few things. Jana says it helps when others to reach out with them. I try to connect with my mother at least once a day and with a friend who is in the healthcare at least once a week. That's great, Jana. It's great for you and it's really great for them to be hearing from you consistently. Candace, I love that. Play with your animals if you don't have kids. Yes, absolutely. That's wonderful. We have a dog too, so being able to play with your animals is a great form of self-care too, and just get lost in that for a little while. And then let's see. Good to keep in mind when we talk with parents with special needs. Yes, absolutely. All these things can go for anyone right now. Moving on to number 11. So expect behavioral issues in children and respond gently. So going back to how we're all having a challenging time, even if kids are too young to really understand what's going on and to process it, they still feel it. They feel the stress that we're experiencing, and their day-to-day routine is totally different. You know, they're not going to their childcare center, or they're not going to their daycare or to preschool or to school if they're enrolled in school. So our kids are also noticing and picking up on this collective stress that we're all feeling. And when that happens, especially when that happens, we're most likely going to see more behavioral issues. So expect that, and knowing when you talk to the parents of your kids and if you're doing any kind of remote or distance learning, that some of those parents may express that they're seeing more behaviors, and remind them as well just to respond as gently as possible. And try to lower expectations and lower demands during this time. So this isn't a time to develop more behavior charts or demand compliance. Right now is really the time to lower expectations. And I know this can kind of be counterintuitive given that we're all educators. However, what we're seeing come down from CDE, so the Center the Department of Education, is that they're really focusing on individuals' mental health, that needs to come first. So we're talking about mental health for us, as the educators. And I feel like if there's any silver lining to all of this, that we are hearing that we're to focus on this now, our own mental health, as well as those of the students, should be paramount as over academics at this time. And hopefully the silver lining is that will continue, because a stressed brain isn't available for learning. So if a student is dysregulated, if we're dysregulated, we're not going to be available to help others, and that student is not going to be available to learn. So knowing that we need to put our mental health first and our students' mental health first, and if that means setting aside the academics temporarily while we engage with our children and play with them and really tune into what's going on with them, that's what we need to do now. And hopefully that's a notion that's going to be carried over when we return back into the school setting as well. So give those parents, if you're talking with parents right now, those permissions to, as much as we're trying to, parents have a lot of pressure on them right now if they are helping if they're doing the homeschooling at home with the support of the teachers. So reminding them that it's okay to set it aside and work with them on helping their student complete it, and know that we need to have some grace with that. Just looking at a question here. It looks like Sharon, you had said the children's behaviors during the Zoom meetings require more patience for sure, lowering expectations, but complementing their creativity and responding to all, absolutely. I think that, Zoom, I know my kid is in and out of his Zoom meetings. He runs away and then he comes back. It is just very challenging to be doing this in person, as well as even more challenging to be doing this online. So yes, lowering expectations and really practicing patience. How do you balance? Candy's asking, how do you balance that with administrators who do not want relaxed expectations? That's a great question, Candy. I would say it's a conversation to be had with your administrator if you feel safe and comfortable talking with them. I can point you in towards some webinars that have been happening. There's a group called Wellness Together, and they've been putting on a webinar series with the center, with the California Department of Education, so the CDE, and they've been talking about this very thing. So it is a message that's being promoted from the top. So I can give you links to the webinar series about that, and you could take a look at that and the resources there that might help you have a conversation with an administrator. Yes, you're welcome. So happy to share that. Because I know that we're all under pressure in so many different ways, but it's just really so paramount that we're taking care of our kids' mental health first. There have been, I think the last webinar series they talked about, there had been at least 6 suicides that we've known of in the state of California of students. So since this COVID-19 outbreak, and knowing that a lot of kids are they can track what students are searching on their iPads. And so there's been a lot of safety concerns that have been flagged for that, which is in one way a blessing that we can see it. And then we know who to help and to reach out to those students. However, it's also a sign that kids are really struggling and also experiencing a lot of stress and need our support and us to respond as gently as possible and lower our expectations during this time now more than ever. Let me know if you guys want some more information on that. I'm going to move on to number 12, focus on safety and attachment. So that kind of goes along with what I've already been talking about, is that we really just need to focus on safety of ourselves and our students, and that attachment piece with our own kids and with the students that we're still working with. So knowing that presence and safety comes above anything else. So being playful, engaging with our kids and with students in a playful way so that they feel connected, and that it's not all about work production all the time. It's about feeling safe and grounded and knowing that their basic needs are met and that we're there for them if they need anything else or need to connect them with some other resources. And yeah, Sharon, thank you for reminding me. She said that our admin reminded her about mandated reporting is still in effect. I was just on a webinar yesterday where they were talking about this around our county, is that child welfare service reports are down significantly. Normally that's because educators are one of the primary sources of referrals to child welfare services, and because students aren't physically in the school, those referrals have actually gone down quite a bit. However, we also know that there's still a lot of kids in their homes right now that unfortunately aren't in safe situations and are suffering, and we aren't seeing it as much or hearing about it as much because they're not physically in school. But a reminder that when you are talking to your students or reaching out to them, if you see them, through Zoom meetings, we do have a window into kids' homes that we've never usually had before. So reminder that we're all mandated reporters, and that if we do see or hear anything that does justify a report, to still follow through with that and call child welfare services and follow through with the report if necessary. All right, guys, number 13, already talked about this. So lower expectations and practice radical self-acceptance. I really like the radical self-acceptance. So I'm going to read a little bit about what the creator of these tips said. She said, we're doing too many things in this moment under fear and stress. This does not make a formula for excellence. Instead, give yourself what psychologists call radical self-acceptance, accepting everything about yourself, your current situation, and your life without question, blame, or pushback. You can't fail at this. There is no roadmap, no precedent for this, and we are all truly doing the best we can in an impossible situation. That really resonated with me. I think knowing that, you know, we all tend to put pressure on ourselves. However, knowing that this really is, a lot of us are in impossible situations right now, and trying to lessen that burden on ourselves to be perfect and to get it right all the time, and knowing that we're all just doing the best we can, and to accept that is a huge form of self-care. Number 14, limit social media and COVID conversation, especially around children. So I know social media can also be a way that we stay connected to our friends and family, which can be a wonderfully positive thing. However, I also hear some of my loved ones and my friends saying, like, gosh, I saw somebody post this and it was just infuriating, or I saw this news article, and getting really upset about that. So it doesn't mean that we don't look at social media ever, or that we don't ever watch the news or read the news. It just means be mindful. So just noticing, if you're noticing that it is kind of causing more stress, then you're getting benefit from it. Or after you watch the news, or after you look at Facebook or Instagram or Twitter and you're escalated and you're upset, every single time you do that, note it, be mindful of it, and maybe decide to limit your access to that. So maybe you only check it once a day or twice a day, and you only look at it for 5 minutes or 10 minutes instead of spending half an hour or hours scrolling on it and reading and watching clips. So it doesn't mean, again, to completely get rid of it, but just notice it and set some boundaries around it if needed. Okay. 15, notice the good in the world, the helpers. So there's so much scary stuff going on right now. However, there's also a lot of wonderful things happening right now. So there's a lot of, I know in my neighborhood, there's just like little stuff has helped me to feel better and just notice it. Like people are putting bears in their windows. So when you take a walk with your kids in the neighborhood, they call it like going on a bear hunt. So the kids are hunting for bears in people's windows, and it just gives them something to do. It's an activity that I, as a parent, don't need to plan, which is great. And it's just fun. And I'm so appreciative that somebody had thought of that and that other people are participating in that. There's also a kindness, like a pantry available in our community now, where people are putting in canned goods and toilet paper and paper towels and cleaning supplies. So it just, somebody had to think to organize that, and people are dropping off stuff. So just noticing those things can really help us lift us up. Paying attention to that. You know, obviously we're so grateful for the frontline workers, for healthcare professionals, for people at the grocery stores, noticing those people, noticing the good that they're doing to show up and to be there. All right. I'm going to check the comments real quick. Delphina said, doing some random acts of kindness during this time feels good. I've received a couple, and I've done a couple too. That's great, Delphina. It's kind of like paying it forward. Yes, if you can do some random act of kindness. And it's not only, the science behind that is interesting, because you would think that it's about, you know, that person receiving it is going to feel the benefit, but really we feel the benefit. When we give, it releases dopamine in our systems, which is a feel-good chemical. And it actually helps us to feel better when we do for others. So we're wired that way, to connect and as a community to give to others. So it actually helps. It's a form of self-care to actually help to take care of other people too. Christine, you mentioned chalk walk. When you go for a walk, write kind messages on the sidewalk for others. Absolutely. That's a wonderful one. I've seen that in my neighborhood too. I've also seen people painting rocks and just leaving those painted rocks randomly on trails or around the neighborhood. That's also a really fun one, especially to engage kids in too. All right, number 16, we just talked about this. So help others. So find ways, big and small, to give back to others. Doesn't need to be a grand gesture, can be little. 17, find something you can control and control the heck out of it. I know for my husband, this has been house projects. So he's really been on a house project kick. And so finding some, that's his thing to control is building a storage shed right now. So he's been doing that and obsessing over it, but it's something to focus on, right? It's something that we can control. So try to find something like that you can control in this life. And during this time, since so many things right now are out of our control, is one way to help ground ourselves again and take care of ourselves. 18, find a long-term project to dive into. So this is one of those things that I think don't put added pressure on yourself. However, if you're able to, things like if you have the space, like a really giant puzzle is a really fun thing to work on, and just helps you to focus your energy somewhere else. Learning a new skill, knitting, if that's something you wanted to do, or any kind of new skill that you've always thought like, gosh, I would always want to try that, but I've never had the opportunity to do that. If you do have that time right now, I know a lot of us with little kids right now, that's still hard to do, but if you can, it's a great way to take care of yourself during this time. Art or craft projects have been shown to produce the same dopamine response as what Candy is saying. Absolutely. So that's number 20. Actually, we're jumping ahead, but that's perfect, Candy, is that yes, find an expressive art and go for it. So engaging in art activities does also access that area of the brain and release those feel-good chemicals. So another fun thing to do. To help ourselves. Number 19, engage in repetitive or left and right movements. So things where we're crossing hemispheres is also a great way to engage in self-care. So there's, yoga exercises do this, but there's a lot of different ways that we can do that. All right, I'm going to move on to number 21. So find lightness and humor in each day. So sometimes I think when we're feeling very stressed, or we know that there's an international crisis right now going on, we feel like we can't laugh about anything. We almost feel guilty doing it. Give yourself permission to do that right now. It's so important that we feel that emotion and that we connect with others in that way too. I normally, honestly, am not a comedy watcher, but I've been watching a comedy in the evenings, and that's been really helping to bring some lightness into my day. So just trying to find that humor where you can and giving yourself that permission. 22, reaching out for help if you need it. So remember that your team is here for you. Again, if you need anything, text me or email me and I'll respond and help provide you with some support, but also remember that your school team is there for you still. And if you need anything, to reach out for help. If you or someone else you think does need help, 211 is a great resource to call. If you just dial 211 and tell them what's going on for you or somebody else, they can point you towards a lot of resources too. 23, chunk your quarantine time. So just take it moment by moment. I think we could all think about, where is this going? What's this going to look like in a month? What's this going to look like in 6 months? What are we going to go back to school in the fall? What's that going to look like? Are we going to go into lockdown again next winter? We don't know, is the answer. And that's so hard to deal with that uncertainty. So I think it is so important to take care of ourselves by just taking everything moment by moment and day by day. So when we notice ourselves, and I'm totally guilty of this too, and have to practice thought stopping with myself, if I notice myself thinking too far in advance and starting to spin out over that and what that may look like and how stressful that may be, I literally picture a stop sign in my brain to stop myself and remind myself to chunk my time. So I just need to think about what's coming next today. Okay, next you need to get ready for lunch. And then later I have this webinar, and then after that, dinner, right? And just take it moment by moment and day by day. Otherwise we can get very overwhelmed. 24, remind yourself daily that this is temporary. It can be really hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel. However, this will end. We don't know exactly when, or all the things that are going to take place between now and then, but that this is temporary. This isn't going to be our existence forever. So even though we don't know exactly when, we know that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, that it will happen, and that this is temporary. And 25, find the lesson in all of this. So if you can, think about what you're taking from it. I'm going to read again what the psychologist who wrote this said. She said, "This whole crisis can seem sad, senseless, and at times avoidable. When psychologists work with trauma, a key feature to helping someone work through said trauma is to help them find their agency, the potential positive outcomes they can affect, the meaning and construction that can come out of destruction. What can each of us learn here in big and small ways from this crisis? What needs to change in ourselves, our homes, our communities, our nation, and our world?" So thinking that, things are probably not going to look the same after this crisis as they do now. So one of those things already mentioned, maybe a silver lining that comes out of this is that we as educators and administrators put more value and emphasis on staff self-care, of helping you to take care of yourself and promoting that as a value in our schools. And also that our students' mental health needs to come above their academics. And so for them to get that help so that they're available to receive and benefit for those academics, I'm hoping will be a silver lining that comes out of all of this. All right, everybody. I'm going to move on now. I don't know if any of you, if you've heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I just wanted to show you guys this slide. I think it's a great visual to understand why we may be feeling a lot of stress and why we may not be at the best version of ourselves. So Maslow, he developed this hierarchy of needs, and you'll notice at the very top is self-actualization. So this would be like the best version of ourselves. So our desire to become the most that we can be, and we're able to do that, and when we have all of our other needs met. And so as you go from the bottom up, so you'll see the physiological needs being at the very bottom. So we need those basic needs to be met in order to be able to go any higher up on the triangle to reach self-actualization. So we need things like air, water, food, shelter, sleep, clothing in order to feel safe. So moving up into safety. Health is there. So knowing that a lot of people's right now, if you know somebody that is affected by COVID-19 or experiencing any health issues in general, that means their safety needs are compromised, right? And right now we have a felt sense that our safety needs are compromised. We're driving around or going to grocery stores and seeing people with masks on. That triggers our feelings of insecurity and feeling unsafe. So knowing that, therefore, if we're in those areas of Maslow's hierarchy, then it's much harder to be able to access the higher areas. So things like the love and belonging, that sense of connection. So again, going back to some of those tips from earlier, having some grace and some forgiveness for ourselves and for those around us if they're not the best version of themselves, knowing that it's because a lot of our safety needs and physiological needs, some people's physiological needs, are not necessarily being met right now. So it's hard for them to really be able to access and experience that love and belonging. And then even higher up, the esteem. So being able to have respect for oneself and to be able to show respect for others, being able to have self-esteem and strength. So if we don't have any of those other needs met, or some of those needs met below, then it's hard to have those express those higher needs. So this is not only true now, this is true not during times where we're not in a crisis. So it just makes, I always think about our students, and I work in the programs for kids with emotional disturbance in our TLP classrooms, or our GROW classrooms, we call them, with therapeutic learning programs. And a lot of our students in those programs don't even have their physiological needs met at home. So, and that's, again, true when we're not even in a crisis. So remembering that we have to help them there if we can even expect them to be able to move up in that hierarchy. So true for our kids and true for us. All right, so we try to get those needs met where we can, but also it's really just a reminder to have some grace for yourself and others, because we're all depleted in some of those areas right now. So how does this apply to us in the school context? Point I want to make here is that in order to be really effective in what we do, so not just teach, the academics, but really to connect with students, we need to be in touch with our own stuff. So this speaks to self-care. So we need to be able to notice that we're feeling stressed, and engage and practice some self-care. If we can't do that for ourselves, then we can't expect to be able to be there for our students. So it's important to be aware of what may be contributing to a student's behavior. However, it's even more important that we're in touch with what's contributing to our own. So if we're able to note our own stress and take care of it and be present for our students, that's going to help with that student's behavior much more than it is of solving what's going, just fixing their behavior. We can't lend or teach a skill to a student that we ourselves don't possess. So if we aren't able to do this, of trying to get in touch with ourselves and practice some form of self-care, then we can't be expected to be able to teach that to somebody else, right? And then if we take care of ourselves, we can be present enough to take care of others. I think this point is really important. That's why I highlighted the enough, because we're not all going to get this right all the time. It's absolutely impossible, right? We're human. We all have our own stuff. We cannot be perfect all the time. So it's not that every time we're feeling a little bit of stress, we note it, we know exactly what the causes of it, we take care of it, and we're present all the time. Not possible. It's not possible as an educator. It's not possible as a parent. What is possible is to make an attempt, is to slow down, be aware, and give it our best shot. We're not going to get it right all the time, right? But if we're trying, then we can be present enough to take care of others, right? So again, you're not going to get it right all the time, but owning it goes a long way. I really try to practice that with my own toddler. If I'm stressed out and I'm not catching it in the moment, and maybe I don't engage, and which happens more frequently now because of the higher levels of stress than usual. But if I don't engage in a really connected, calm way with him and regulate myself to be there for him, I do my best to own it and repair with him and apologize and connect with him and then try better next time, right? But knowing that I'm present enough and more times than not, and have that compassion for myself is a big piece of self-care. Okay. So this comes back to the point that it starts with you. So knowing how our own histories, our own beliefs play a role in how we're engaging with those around us. Thinking about, and this can speak to the, what kind of mood did I walk into the room in? And that could be, what kind of mood did I walk into the Zoom room in right now? I myself was having a little bit of a hard moment before we entered into this workshop because my son was having a hard time getting dressed and getting out the door. So I was feeling a bit stressed. So that mindfulness and grounding activity for me was really beneficial. So noting that, being aware that it's okay to have a bad morning. Sometimes we just wake up on the wrong side of the bed. That happens, and that's absolutely acceptable. Just being aware of it is what's the key piece of it, and trying to practice some form of self-care in order to recalibrate ourselves. And then talking about that, how can I reset so I can be the best version of myself? All right. So told you we'd talk about some definitions. So now we're going to start to get into those definitions. So this one is on trauma. So we've talked about how we're all experiencing collective trauma right now. Some of you may work with some students who have trauma histories or not. However, some of you may have your own trauma history, so this may be a bit triggering for you. So again, this is the best place to practice self-care during this time. That our definition is trauma is an umbrella term used there's a typo here. It's the inability of an individual or community to respond in a healthy way. So meaning physically, emotionally, and mentally to acute or chronic stress. So right now we're experiencing stress. So again, we're all experiencing a trauma, and then we have other layers. We may have other layers, and our students may have other layers of trauma on top of this. This is where, as an educator, is the secondary or vicarious trauma, if you guys haven't heard of that term before. So the definition for this is the natural consequent behaviors resulting from knowledge about a traumatizing event experienced by a significant other. It is the stress from wanting to help a traumatized or suffering person. So whether we're physically in school and hearing about the trauma that students have in their lives or have experienced, or just right now with this global crisis that we're experiencing, we can't help but take that on. It's not a choice that we make. it's our biology. We're all connected. So I don't think any of you as educators, none of us are in this field because we dislike children, right? We're all in this field because we care about children and we feel that we can make a difference. So we're also empathic. We're all wired and to exude empathy. And so knowing that we can't help but take on what a student may be experiencing, and that goes for any time. And especially now. So if you notice yourself feeling weighed down or bogged down after talking with some students, knowing that we can't help but take on that stress to some degree. And that's called the secondary or vicarious trauma. Some more definitions for you. Compassion. So compassion meaning a feeling of deep sympathy or sorrow for another, accompanied by a strong desire to relieve their suffering. And then moving along on that, compassion fatigue, this would be the emotional residue or strain of exposure to working with those suffering from the consequences of traumatic events. So it differs from burnout, which we're going to talk about, but they can coexist together. And compassion fatigue can occur due to exposure on one case, or can be due to cumulative affective trauma. So again, I think we're all very compassionate people. That's why we're in this field, and we're all at times going to experience compassion fatigue. So feeling that strain of working with people that may be suffering, right? Or that are struggling, that are experiencing a lot of stress. So we're all going to experience compassion fatigue from time to time. With that, I want to show you this cute little video clip that really exemplifies this point. So bear with me while I change my screen here. I'm going to change what I share. I'm going to rewind this video. Okay, I'm going to show this video to you. It's just a short little clip. Okay, bring you back to our other screen. Okay, so what did you guys think of that video? I think it's such a good just visual representation of this compassion fatigue feeling. Awesome. Sounds like Nikki saying awesome. Sarah said, love this video. Thank goodness for our pets. Yes, absolutely. So this is just a visual representation of what happens, right? A very simplified version, but where we see somebody else suffering, we feel that, and we have that felt sense of connection with that person, and we can't help but take on some of that because we want to help relieve their suffering. We help to lighten the load for them by taking that on, but then that has to go somewhere, right? Or else that contributes to then compassion fatigue and to burnout. So we take it on, but this is where the self-care piece comes in, is that's how we unload some of that, right? And release some of that by practicing all those things that we just talked about, by taking care of, by connecting with others, by getting outside, by taking walks, by hugging our pets and connecting. So that's the way that we lighten that load again. Reason why these ideas and these forms of self-care are so important, right? So that therefore we can fill our bank again, and be able to then take on some more and be able to do that again, and then relieve our bank, take care of ourselves, and connect again. All right. Will, thank you. Yeah, connections on the outside, build connections on the inside. Yes, Will's quoting something from Conscious Discipline. which is a video series modules by Dr. Becky Bailey that I know he recently participated in. If you guys are interested via through some of our SELPA PDs, we are going to be doing a series by Dr. Becky Bailey. I'm going to be showing 10 modules on her trainings, which is a social emotional curriculum and model that she has developed, and it has so much wonderful information about students and how to work with them and to build their social emotional skills. So he's quoting that because yes, being able to connect with individuals, connect with students on the outside builds their connections on the inside and wires them for success too. All right, so some of those signs that we're experiencing that compassion fatigue, so we are taking that on, would be things like we're isolating, we're feeling more depressed, we're having difficulty focusing, we may be feeling kind of aggressive, like more than usual, angry, excited, or anxiety, insomnia, so we'd be having more trouble sleeping than normal, we may be drinking more heavily than we normally do, or having changes in our appetite, so eating more or less. And just experiencing more anger or sadness. You asked who is the author of the video. Furnace asked who is the author. I'm not sure. I will look that up for you. Did you say the author, or were you talking about Dr. Becky Bailey that I mentioned? Oh, the quote. Yes, Dr. Becky Bailey. Perfect. All right. So signs of compassion fatigue continued. So another sign of compassion fatigue may be denial. And this could be the most dangerous symptom to compassion fatigue. The Compassion Fatigue Project says denial can easily hinder your ability to assess the level of fatigue and stress in your life, as well as thwart your efforts to begin the healing process. So you may express symptoms of compassion fatigue that we just went over. So those external symptoms that somebody else may be able to pick up on too. Or you may just be in a place where you're just saying like, I'm fine. Right? And not being in touch with it and denying it. And that's the most dangerous form, as the most dangerous symptom, because then you aren't able to then go to the next layer of relieving some of that compassion fatigue, of practicing that self-care. So again, it all comes back to awareness and accepting that this happens. It happens to all of us. That we are going to experience compassion fatigue and stress, and that we just need to be aware of it and be able to accept it, own it, and therefore we'll be in a place to do something about it. So in schools, so leaders and peers should look for these signs in others. So again, this would be kind of more if we're back in the physical setting of school, but things like chronic absenteeism, you might see more struggles amongst teaching teams, more aggressive behaviors towards each other, or just being really short with students. Colleagues may feel overwhelmed or they're unable to finish their work, and maybe they normally are, and you're noticing that they're not anymore. Negativity towards school leadership, resistance to change, and a general apathy towards the school's mission and success. So all of these could be signs of that compassion fatigue. So one more definition, burnout. So this is defined as a state of physical, emotional, and mental exhaustion by long-term involvement in emotionally demanding situations. It's characterized by emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, and a reduced feeling of personal accomplishment. Burnout is a condition that begins gradually and becomes progressively worse. So I want to show you this next slide. So this is kind of what the continuum may look like. So we all have compassion, right? We all have empathy as well. And then this could lead to the secondary trauma. So we're exposed to students. We all now are exposed to trauma, and our students that are experiencing the trauma too. And so we can't help but take some of that on, which we've already talked about. And then that can lead to the compassion fatigue and then down the continuum towards burnout. So we all vacillate on this all the time. What we need to be aware of is if we're stuck at that higher end more often than not. So if we're stuck more in the compassion fatigue and the burnout, and we're not practicing self-care in order to get back up to the place where we're being able to be empathic and compassionate. So knowing where we are on that, I know that I myself go up and down on this all the time, right? So I notice for me, going back to the definition of burnout, is when I feel sorry, let me go back here for a sec. When I feel like I'm not experiencing any personal accomplishment, if I feel like I'm not being effective at all in what I'm doing, that can really lead to me feeling burned out. So it's being aware of that and noticing that and knowing that it's not all about me, but I work with people. We all work with people. And so it's not always about us. I'm reminding myself of that. And then again, practicing some self-care, taking care of myself, whether that means connecting with my friend or colleague, exercising, getting outside, so that I can then go back up and be in a place where I can be empathic and compassionate again, is when I'm going to be effective. Also, I can't be effective when I'm experiencing compassion fatigue and burnout. Okay. So knowing that you're going to be on the somewhere on the spectrum, and it's, again, comes back to the awareness, so that we can take care of ourselves and get back to that place of compassion and empathy. I'm going to check the chat box real quick. Will is saying, I feel like that when we start taking things personally, when we reach that burnout place. Absolutely. So if we start taking that on personally, and I'm responsible for the way that this student is or isn't responding right now, that's when we start to feel a lot more burned out. So yeah, well, definitely. So being aware that, if you guys haven't heard the term Q-tip, so quit taking it personal. Remind yourself that it's not about you. Normally, it's normally about whatever that person or that student is experiencing in their life. And they're connecting with you, and it may not be in the healthiest way, but it's not really about you. And to try to remind yourself of that and practice the self-care. It also means balancing the two parts of our lives. Both work and home life can both be stressful. Absolutely, Gianna. And right now, that's even more complicated given that we're working from home. So yes, trying to find some sort of balance in those as much as possible can be very, very stressful. And again, just being aware of that and doing what we can in order to practice the self-care. All right, we're going to do one more meditation break. This is going to be a different guided activity for you, so you can see which one you like better. But we're going to take another 5.5-minute break, and I'll share this one with you guys. And then we'll come back together as a group. So again, get comfortable and just enjoy this guided meditation.
So find a relaxed, comfortable position, seated on a chair or on the floor, on a cushion. Keep your back upright, but not too tight. Hands resting wherever they're comfortable. Tongue on the roof of your mouth or wherever it's comfortable. And you can notice your body from the inside. Noticing the shape of your body, the weight, touch. And let yourself relax and become curious about your body. Seated here, the sensations of your body, the touch, the connection with the floor or the chair. Relax any areas of tightness or tension. Just breathe, soften. And now begin to tune into your breath in your body. Feeling the natural flow of breath. Don't need to do anything to your breath. Not long, not short, just natural. And notice where you feel your breath in your body. It might be in your abdomen. It may be in your chest or throat or in your nostrils. See if you can feel the sensations of breath, one breath at a time. When one breath ends, the next breath begins. Now, as you do this, you might notice that your mind may start to wander. You might start thinking about other things. If this happens, this is not a problem. It's very natural. Just notice that your mind has wandered. You can say thinking or wandering in your head softly. And then gently redirect your attention right back to the breathing. So we'll stay with this for some time in silence, just a short time. Noticing our breath, from time to time getting lost in thought and returning to our breath. See if you can be really kind to yourself in the process. And once again, you can notice your body, your whole body seated here. Let yourself relax even more deeply. And then offer yourself some appreciation for doing this practice today. Whatever that means to you. Finding a sense of ease and well-being for yourself in this day.
All right, everybody, come back to our PowerPoint. How was that for everybody? Did you like that more or less than the first one? Was it, do you feel more relaxed again after it? Kirsty, you preferred the first one? Yeah, so it's good to know, Sarah, you thought her voice was more relaxed. So it's good to know, again, to practice different versions. So know what you like, because what works for you, again, may not work for somebody else. So just trying out different forms of meditation, different guided meditations. Some people don't like voices, they just prefer the music. So it really just depends on what works for you.
For me, what's more like, it's birds in the background.
The birds in the background? Well, that is not planned. That's just outside my house right now, but I'm really glad that that's helping.
That helps, yeah.
Yeah.
There's always some, because we do mind yeti in class every morning.
Yeah.
And there's always like some birds or some background noise with some calming music, which is always calming.
Calming, I agree. I love that. I mean, in my Calm app, there's always, it's always playing that too. It's always playing some birds chirping or just nature sounds, yeah, and it's really, really relaxing. I think that's a form of mindfulness too. So I think sometimes people think that mindfulness means meditation, that you have to sit still, you need to be in a quiet space, and that's not necessarily true. So mindfulness means just being present in the moment and noticing. So I try to do this just simple times when I'm going on a walk, say in the neighborhood with my son, and things like hearing birds chirp. So it's a lot of times we can just be stuck, we can be distracted in our own thoughts. But if we can just notice the birds chirping, even if for a second, right, we hear it, we can get benefit from that neurologically. We benefit from that.
The rain, like raindrops, like all those things. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Candy just said that too. She said, I like rain and storm clouds like thunder. When I am tense, I use the Calm app with those things on it and it makes me sleepy. Yeah, Candy, so it's great that you know that that works for you. So again, that could be a sound that's very calming and peaceful for you. There's so many apps that have all different kinds of sounds. So some people find the noise on like a freeway with like cars passing by to be very relaxing. There's apps that have different noises for that, or jungle sounds, whatever it is that you feel helped you to get to a space of inner peace and calm is wonderful. Yeah, and white noise machines, totally. All right, so now that we know all of these terms, so we've already talked a bit about what to do. This is going to be more applicable for when we get back into the school setting. But the whole point of all of this is to drive home the message that you need to put your oxygen mask on first. So a lot of you have probably heard that setting or that metaphor before, meaning that when we're on an airplane, which a lot of us are not recently, but when we're on an airplane, how they go, the stewardess, or whatever the terms are for them now, flight assistants, go over is that if the masks drop down and if we need to get oxygen, that we need to put the oxygen mask on ourselves before we put it on children and help them with that. And that's because if we pass out, we can't be in a place to help our child to put on their oxygen mask. So that's why this metaphor for taking care of our own mental health is so important, is that we need to take care of ourselves and our mental health and practice self-care before we can be there for our own children, for our own partners, and for our students and for our colleagues. Because if we're not healthy mentally and we're experiencing an overload of stress, it's not possible for us to then help them with theirs. So just a reminder, read this quote: in order to support students or those around you, you must first support yourself. So think of it as a banking system. You need to have money to make withdrawals. If you have nothing left to give because you have not taken care of yourself, your bank will be deficient and you will be even more stressed. Remember that you are worthy of being cared for also. So this is all what we've been talking about, but the definition of self-care is this is by the Department of Health. So the care taken by individuals toward their own health and well-being. It comprises of the actions they take to lead a healthy lifestyle, to meet their social, emotional, and psychological needs, to take care of their long-term condition, and to prevent further illness or accidents. Beyond engaging in an aspirational goal, so sometimes self-care can feel that way, engaging in self-care has also been described as an ethical imperative. So again, just driving home that point that it's a must. If we're expecting ourselves to be there for other people, we have to take care of ourselves. Being a trained therapist, we take classes in this, right? This is something that we get trained in as therapists and as educators. Don't necessarily, teachers, paraprofessionals, don't get that level of training, right? To be able to know the importance of this. So again, even more reason why we need to talk about this more in schools is that we have to be able to take care of ourselves. It's that ethical imperative in order to be there for other people. I'm going to go ahead and show you guys also this self-care video. So I think this guy does a good job of kind of breaking down self-care, and it may just be good for you to hear it from somebody else, some other ideas from somebody else other than me. So hold on real quick while I share this new one with you. All right, we're going to watch this video and then we'll come back to our PowerPoint again.
Talk about self-care. Now, Parks and Rec, of course, is pretty great, but self-care is more than just treating yourself. Self-care is not a reward, though sometimes that can be part of it. It's a vital piece of the ongoing process of being a human. To quote the self-help classic, Codependent No More, self-care is an attitude that says, I am responsible for myself. In other words, I am my responsibility, and I will honor that responsibility as I would anything else that was precious to me. So let's make an action plan for using self-care to make our lives more awesome. Step 1. Recognize that it is indeed okay to take care of yourself. Nay, it is not just okay, it is smart. As Lifehacker puts it, self-care helps prevent burnout, reduces the negative psychological and physical effects of stress, and helps you refocus on what's true and important. Like, there's an entire peer-reviewed international journal on burnout. This is like a real big, difficult problem to solve. Now, this may seem counterintuitive, but it actually makes you more productive, not less, to set time aside for yourself. And regardless of your productivity levels, recognize that you are a human being, and that is enough to warrant compassion and kindness. For real. Step 2, ideally before the need strikes, research outwardly and inwardly what self-care means and what works for you. There are self-care actions that can help pretty much everyone: getting proper nutrition, some exercise, enough sleep, hydrating, and taking small breaks throughout the workday. I like to go for walks, and I like to be forced to do it by my friends or family or baby. We'll link to a list of almost 50 self-care actions down in the doobly-doo. But everyone is unique, so it's important to ask what actions make me feel better. Journaling, texting something nice to a friend, like watching videos of pug puppies, doing a bunch of push-ups, pillow fights, putting some projects on the back burner maybe. I personally am all in for the baby cuddles. I have a baby now, and I feel like I'm doing a thing that I was designed for, and that I need to be doing, and that I also just really like. Sometimes he's angry though, and he yells at me, but most of the time I get cuddles. Now, one possible self-care action from us to you: start a digital warm and fuzzy file and fill it with compliments or kind words you've received, good memories, and favorite photos. Like, I have to admit, I get lots of people saying nice things about me on the internet, and that helps get me through the day. Being able to look through this file when you're feeling down might go a long way to bringing you back up. You want this list to be both ample and flexible, and you may even want to break it into different categories. For instance, T. Michael Martin, the fellow who wrote this script, by the way, has a spreadsheet of self-care actions organized by types of negative experiences. After all, the self-care you need while you're depressed may not be the same self-care that helps when you're overwhelmed with work. Also, if other people are involved in these self-care actions, it's totally cool to let them know now that they are part of your action plan. They may not always be available, but odds are if they're a good friend, they're going to do their best to do their part. Step 3, self-care powers activate. It's best if you can recognize the warning signs that you could use some self-care before things go into the red zone. For me, by the way, it's when I notice my fingers going to websites that I didn't intend on going to. Like, just typing in reddit.com when I have a ton of work to do is a sign that I should go for maybe a little walk to recharge the batteries. If you're keeping a journal, you might notice a pattern or two in your behavior. Perhaps you'll notice a bleaker mood than normal or disturbed sleep. Either way, once the need becomes apparent, consult your list and follow through. And that is all that we have for you today. But if you have any self-care tips, please let us and other people who are looking know down in the comments below. We would love to hear from you. In the meantime, take care of yourself, your friends, and your neighbors. It's the adult thing to do.
So anything that you guys got out of that we haven't already talked about? What are some of the things you can throw in the chat box that you got out of that? He's kind of a character. Many tie. And Selma, what do you mean by many tie? I liked his idea of the kind of creating a space to keep all of those good messages that people have given you. I think that is a great idea, to be able to do that so that you can reference it, and knowing that, the file, Will said. So keeping a file of things. And Candace says journaling. Yeah, journaling can be a great form of self-care too. So just more ideas to put in your toolbox in terms of how you can take care of yourself. And yeah, Christy's saying he's great. He adds humor to something that is very important. Yeah, I agree. He has a really good energy. Just kind of seems like such a character. So remembering that. And then what was the other one I wanted to highlight that he said? Oh, that again, the point that one thing that works for me might not work for you, but also knowing that when you're experiencing different kinds of stress for different reasons, you may want to have a toolkit for those different things, because when you're feeling sad, the self-care you use may not be the same as when you're feeling anxious. So trying to be aware of that too. Okay. Here's just a nice picture visual of all the different kinds of self-care and different ways to take care of yourself. So thinking about the mental self-care, so things like we were talking about, like journaling or reading, having a file of all those positive things, positive affirmations, practicing mindfulness, and then spiritual self-care, so things like the meditation, mindfulness, time in nature, prayer, if that works for you, finding things that inspire you. Emotional self-care, so things like dancing, singing, more arts, artistic activities, time with loved ones, and we're going to talk about this a little bit, but setting healthy boundaries. And then the physical self-care, so stretching, exercise. Because a lot of times when we hear self-care, we think, oh, you just need to go to yoga, right? You just need to go to yoga once a week. We can't go to yoga classes right now. And maybe yoga is great for you to practice at home right now, but that's not the only form of self-care. There's lots and lots of different ways to take care of ourselves. So along those lines, so self-care may not always constitute a health promoting behavior. So what do I mean by that? So self-care might not always look like eating super healthy, exercising all the time. It could be a small indulgence that produces a positive mental or emotional gain. So we shouldn't necessarily frown upon those. They're not necessarily bad things. So things like eating sweets, eating chocolate, making cookies, having a glass of wine, having a beer. And then the catch, though, to all of this is knowing the line between indulgent and something that constitutes detrimental debauchery. So knowing yourself, knowing where your line is important with this. And that you don't want it to then become something that's detrimental for you. However, a small indulgence can be a form of self-care. And it's not only limited to specific activities. So setting boundaries on our time and our availability is also a form of self-care. So you're also taking care of yourself if you say no, if you're feeling overwhelmed and you set some boundaries with people and say, gosh, I'd really love to be able to be there for you in that way. However, I'm feeling pretty overwhelmed at the moment. Right now, I don't think I can do that. Let's check back in next week and see if that's something I can do. That is another form of self-care. So self-care doesn't need to be adding things that you need to do. It can be taking things off your plate as well and setting boundaries around things. So being choosy with your commitments. And those may be virtual commitments, Zoom meetings. If you're connecting with your friends or family via, FaceTime or Zoom, it might mean setting boundaries around those, about what time of day you do that, how long you do that, how often you do that. Because although it's really important to connect, it's also important that that doesn't become another source of stress for you. So you can take care of yourself by setting boundaries on one of those. Gianna said setting boundaries is one of the hardest but best things I've learned as an adult. Yeah, definitely. It can be really hard, but the more you start practicing it, gosh, you can start getting really good at it. So something to keep in mind. Self-care works in conjunction with and not in isolation from community care. So we need those social networks that support the best version of ourselves. And I say that because sometimes I think we can gravitate towards admiring problems with people or with our loved ones, and we can talk about things and then we notice, gosh, I care about this person, and yet every time I talk with them or I hang out with that group of people, I don't feel very good afterwards. So it doesn't mean that those aren't good people or that we don't care about them. It's just something to pay attention to, right? So paying attention to your social networks and who you're talking to on a regular basis and what that's eliciting from you and how you're feeling, that maybe you want to limit that or schedule certain amounts of time that you do work with that or talk with that group of people. All right, having a self-preservation mindset. So you want to build some healthy emotional boundaries to identify what you wish you could do versus what you can actually do. So we can't actually eradicate or prevent suffering for our students. So we are not that powerful, unfortunately. Wish we were, but we're not, right? We can't do that for our students. We can't do that for our loved ones. But what we can do is show up every day. Right now that's virtually, but we can show up every day. We can be supportive. We can advocate for ourselves, for our students, for the people that we care about, and we can love them and care about them. That's what we can do that is within our control, right? So that's part of that self-preservation mindset. So it's not about like, gosh, this is all so overwhelming that I can't possibly do anything to change this circumstance. You can be present, right? And be compassionate and take care of yourself. You can begin each morning by thinking of your students and say to yourself, I will provide a loving and safe environment in my classroom today. So again, coming back to when we're back in school, but that's something that you could start your day with as a mantra of what you can do and what you can be in control of. And that can even be remotely over Zoom right now, right? How are you going to provide that remotely? At the end of each day, breathe in slowly and calmly and breathe out and say, I've done a good work today. I will let the stress and work go until tomorrow. So, and right now, normally we have routines for when we come home from work, when we're physically, at schools or out and about supporting students. And we may have a car ride or a walk home where we can kind of decompress. And right now, when we're working remotely, we don't have that separation. So trying to create that separation for yourself. So when you do log off of a Skype or a Zoom call, or you do stop your lesson planning or whatever it is that you're engaging in that's work-wise, and you're transitioning back to being at home and with your family, trying to have some kind of routine that you engage in. So whether this may be a mantra, but just taking a minute to disengage from that and to calm yourself down so that you can re-enter that space with your family and be as present as possible. Because again, normally we get that time and we kind of take that for granted now that we're working from home and with our families at home all the time. So just reminder to try to create that space for yourself. Kirsty said, just checking the chat box, that because everything in technology is so heavy right now, I've set my phone to do not disturb for every day at 8 p.m. Yeah, so it stops texts, emails, calls, and notifications, and you can shut off for a few hours and draw that boundary between work and home. So absolutely. I mean, no matter what your job is. I know Kirsty works for SELPA. She works as a wraparound clinician for our WRAP team, but we all need to set boundaries, right? None of us are expected to be available 24/7 for work. So setting those boundaries for yourself is so important. All right. In-school support to promote self-care. So this is for back in the school setting. So right now we're doing professional development around self-care. Hopefully this is something that will continue when we're not in a social distancing time, that this will be, again, something that's valued. So we'll be doing more of this. Some ideas, these are some things that are not necessarily in your control that may be more for administrators to think about, but how can they incorporate this and bring in things like some restorative practice into the school setting for the educators. And give their staff an outlet or a space to talk about things that they've experienced, some traumas that they've taken on from their students, and provide training on how they can cope with that in a healthy way. So again, acknowledging that you as the educators are exposed to this and you can't help but take it on, and giving you a space to talk about that and process it and learn how to take care of yourselves more and be there for each other. So speaking of that, but like building in some fun team building outings, writing exercises, or small group counseling sessions. And knowing that these are things that you can suggest if you feel safe or comfortable doing that, or starting your own smaller group. I know some schools have their staff wellness groups where they talk about these ideas and have started implementing some practices at school. Something to think about when we do go back into the school setting, but then also something that you can create remotely with your teams that you're working with right now. So think about some things that you can do. So this is just a slide. I've talked about this a lot throughout this, is that the power of connection. So knowing that even with social distancing, the power of connection is so huge. We're wired to connect. And like Will quoted, you know, the connections on the outside build connections on the inside for healthy development. Let's see, building a strong peer network. So we'll wrap this up, guys, in probably less than 10 minutes. I'm going to get you out of here a little early, but don't go it alone. So just some more tips. So work to cultivate a school culture where supporting each other is the norm. Building and relying upon small support groups, so staffs or teams of work and home friendships can help make the work more manageable. When we realize that we're not alone in things, we feel lighter, right? We feel better. We're connected. It's important that these support networks remain positive resource. So like I was talking about earlier, if you notice that you talk to a group of people or a particular person and more often than not, you feel kind of down and burned out, frustrated afterwards, being aware of that and really trying to focus your energy and time on those networks that bring you up and build you up. Take a walk with a colleague during your prep. So again, when we're back in school, remember that positivity is contagious and peer support makes a strong foundation for your hard work. So if you can help build each other up, that's school family. Yeah. Candace is saying it's been hard to turn off the worry since everything is up in the air. I feel you, Candace. I think we all have kind of a chronic feeling of stress and anxiety and worry right now. And again, that's where that radical self-acceptance comes in, is that we accept that this is a reality right now. This is where we're at. And it is really hard to let go of that. Again, that's where I try myself to put up that stop sign, because I find myself thinking too far into the future, and really practicing some mindfulness and just being present in the here and now helps me with that worry. And also giving yourself being forgiving to yourself, knowing that, yes, you're going to experience worry right now, and that's normal. And just trying to take care of yourself where you can. And Gianni's saying many hands lighten the load, especially with everything going on right now. Yes, that absolutely, that connection. So what can you do? Let's see, this would be I'm going to skip that one actually, because that's more if we're in the school setting, but putting some tools in your toolbox. We talked about a lot of different ideas, but what's something that you think you can put into practice now? So I want you all to think about one form of self-care that you can start doing today, and make it something that's feasible. It doesn't have to be long. It can be very short in duration. A suggestion is to set reminders for it. So I know that one of my colleagues, she has a really difficult time remembering to drink water throughout the day. So she has her phone set every hour to ding. So that way she remembers that ding means she needs to drink some water. So that could be a good reminder for you to practice some self-care, is setting those reminders on your phone. Or like Kirsty said, to set a boundary where your phone is therefore off during a certain amount of time, you're not available. Have someone hold you accountable too. So that's another good tip. My colleague also holds me accountable. So I tend to oh, sorry, go ahead.
Making a list.
Making a list. Yeah, well, that's a great recommendation. So yes, making a list for yourself so that you can refer.
And it's okay if you don't get everything done.
Yeah.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
I started making one, and it's, and it's just a checklist, and it's simple things like drink water, breathe, read, write, exercise, like all these things. I've been waking up and doing little workouts in the morning, first thing in the morning, just to get my day going.
Just to get you started on that right foot.
Yeah, just because, since I'm stuck at home, like, I want to build a healthy habit of working out in the morning, as opposed to staying in bed, picking up my phone and scrolling.
Which is so tempting. Yeah. But knowing that that's a great form of self-care for you to get up.
I think with right now, one of the best things too is prioritizing yourself.
Yeah.
In a sense, because we have our time is spread a little bit differently. So I'm finding that the list of things that I've always kept telling myself throughout the year, like, I'm going to start doing this. I'm going to start doing this, to start, eating better, working out, doing things.
Yeah.
This is kind of the time to do it. Spend more time with your family, do those family game nights, Do
Right.
those movie nights, all those little things that you tell yourself, like, I'll make time for them.
Right. Do it now. Now's the time. Yeah. Thank you, Jonah. That's a wonderful reminder. I totally agree with you. I think a lot of times we feel like, oh, I don't have time for that. I don't have time for that. I'll start that, that exercise routine or do that later. But you're right. We're all home now. So now is the best time to be starting those.
Also having a schedule of I am working until a specific time. And then even though it's hard, really walking away, like physically getting up with your timer, putting your phone somewhere else. So if that's what you're using, so that you physically have to remove yourself from your desk or your workspace to be able to go and then turn it off. And then you're like, okay, that was a little bit easier than I thought, and now I'm done. You know, and kind of just walking away.
Right. Yeah, definitely. I love that. Yes. So physically walking away, putting your phone down somewhere else. I know with me, with my laptop, I've been working on from my kitchen island because that's the most comfortable place for me to sit in my house. And so when I turn off from work for the day, closing my computer and putting it away physically somewhere else so that I can't see it, it's not present. And that helps me to switch and be back into my family mode. Chris, I love lists and scratching off when I'm done. So completion is an accomplishment. Yeah, that can definitely be a form of self-care, is creating your to-do list and then just checking those boxes. There's so much satisfaction that could come from that. Vanessa, something you could do, changing your mindset to be able to take the time to do meditations by finding one that I can do daily. Yeah, again, that Calm app is one that I do daily. I really like it. And I love it. Honestly, when I first open it up, the first thing it says is take a breath. And it just reminds me to pause and take a deep breath. And it helps me so much to fall asleep. Kirsty, evening walk with your dogs and kids. That's great. That's something you can start and hopefully do on a daily basis. Singing and dancing from Andrea. That's great. Sounds like you guys all have a good idea. Is Vanessa changing my mindset to be able to take the time to do meditations by finding one you can do daily? Yeah, it's perfect. Great, guys. So we just did this. We just talked about that activity. So again, hope you guys got something out of this. Quote for the day from Delphina: be gentle with yourself. You're doing the best you can. Yes. If you take anything from this, I hope you take that. You're all doing a great job during this really, really difficult time. So know that you're doing the best you can. Practice that radical self-acceptance. There's no roadmap for any of this. And we are going to practice self-care where we can and how we can, and connect with the ones we love as much as possible. With that said, I'm going to go ahead and end today. I'll let you guys out a little bit early so you can practice, if you've allotted this time, 10 minutes of some kind of self-care before you move on to your next commitment or back to your family. And thank you so much for being here today. Reach out if there's anything I could do for you, and I appreciate you all. And take care of yourselves. And I'll stick around. You're welcome. I'll stick around for the next 10 minutes if anybody wants to talk or connect, okay?
I wish you well, Alison. Thank you.
Thank you, Will. You too.